this is the part where we have to get outside our own heads. We like to talk about, how everything impacts us and putting the code of ethics together and getting it out to the firm. But now I think where we are in talking about this intermediate level is this whole thought process development, where we're trying to educate people how to think. But in order to educate your employees how to think about this, we have to sort of sit in their shoes and say, what are the relationships? What's the dimensions that these people have where they have the dilemmas? So that I can then talk to them about how do you process that so we can make good decisions, right? Good for business, good decisions. And so what we have on this slide is really just looking, because when you start to really sit in their shoes, you see that, wow, it's really broad. There's all kinds of ways that they can be impacted. There's a dimension there with the company, right? I'm proud of who I work for. This is a great place. Or sometimes it could be that they are not as happy with the company, okay? Something's going on, or maybe that culture isn't quite what they were hoping it was, and if the culture's not good, then it sort of trickles down, and people don't take it as seriously. And then that's why you see management. Management has a role in there too. From an employee's perspective, a lot of times we think, if my manager tells me I have to do it, then I should do it, even if it's not right, because of that authority that exists. And that goes back to why they keep talking about the tone at the top, why it's so important, because it trumps so much stuff for everyone else in the firm. So if the tone's right, then they're going to make the right decision because they're looking up. And they're going to do what managers do, right? A lot of times when I talk to frontline people, they just act like robots. It's always been done this way. They don't really question because they assume that's what management does. And that's where they can get into trouble. It's okay to question. You have to help them make the decision. It's okay to ask the questions. Coworker. I'll give you a little story of a friend of mine who works at a firm, and she was having a birthday, and she got a phone call from her grandmother a couple days afterwards, and her grandmother said, "Hey, did you like the card that I sent?" And she said, I don't remember getting a card from you, Grandma." Maybe she's not remembering it right. But she said, "No, I sent you a card, and I had a little gift card in there for you." And she said, she told her grandmother, "Well, I never got it." So grandmother said, "Oh, well, I know I sent it to you, and it was with such and such a place." And so she said, "Oh, okay." So she hung up the phone, and she thought, the grandmother called the store because she remembered buying the gift card from there, and the store said, "Yeah, that card's been used." So the grandmother calls the daughter back and says, "Well, the store said it's been used, so I don't know why you're saying you didn't get it." So the employee says, "Well, I live here, so I'll go to the store and find out." So she calls the store and says, "My grandmother sent me a gift card. You're telling her it's used." And in her mind the whole time she's thinking, my grandma got ripped off by the store. Okay? But the store says, "You know what? It was used, and in fact, we have a tape surveillance system. Why don't we just go back because we know when it was used and the time and all of that stuff, so we'll show you the tape and maybe we can find something out." So she goes in with the management, and they're sitting down, and they're playing back the videotape, and two people show up on the tape. Guess what? She knows both of them. One of them works right next to her, and she goes to lunch with her every day. And what's interesting about that is when I talk to management, they always say, "That's not a problem for us because we hire good people." How do you measure that?
I have the same thing that happens. We only hire good people. They'll go a step further. We only hire ethical people. And then what's my next question? Is there a new DNA test you're giving them? Because I'd like to know about that. How are you making sure? So I read all these other jazzy studies that I also cannot source for you. And one of them said that they did a study of high school seniors. And they asked the high school seniors to self-report if they'd ever cheated on an exam. You're going to die. 80%. It self-admitted that they had cheated on an exam. Really? And so you only have the 20%, right, in your firm? I don't think so. Okay? People do stuff because it's easy. You have people in your firm who are making unethical choices, which I would call like the gal who walks into the supply room and starts pulling stuff out to go help to take home the office supplies to go help her son with an art project. Well, what could be more perfect than helping your son with an art project? The goal is good. The means is theft. Happens all the time. It's easy. It's because it's easy.
So we just finish up with the other three here. Like for clients, you know, how often do they say, but this is my best client, or this is our most profitable relationship, okay? Or it's not, and I'm trying to make it right. Or even professional and personal relationships, you know, I golf with this guy, or, you know, he's in the charity that I'm, you know, support, or we go to church together, you know, so, you know, maybe for that, this is okay. And then from the family perspective, I think this is probably the growing area right now for us because of what's happening in the industry. There's probably more ethical dilemmas for employees when it comes to their relationship with their families right now because what's happened over the last couple of years. All this compression, we've seen all these issues within the industry, and it's challenging your employee, okay? And so they may end up with having to deal with something like a pay cut. Sorry, we've got to cut salaries because things are tight, times are tough, profits are down. We're going to knock off 10%, 20%. Have a nice day. Okay? And they go home, and now they've got to explain that to their wife and kids. Sorry, we got to turn the Jag in now, okay, because I can't afford the payment in the house. We're not going to go on vacation because I don't have that. Oh, by the way, things are kind of tough at the office. I'm going to have to start working later hours. Okay? Usually, when you're dealing with family, the idea of fairness comes into the employee's mind because as soon as they feel like it's unfair, it's sort of like an open check for them to do something to balance it back. Okay? Yeah. And what I find a lot of times the importance of compliance officers is you also have to help the other departments, the other business units understand that. Because what happens? HR says, hey, our job is just to cut the salaries. I got to tell the employees, okay? And I don't like doing it, but I'm going to let them go home anyway. And I stop them there and say, no, we got to help them deal with that because of this whole fairness issue. We have to help them understand that this is fair. It's hitting everybody in the firm. We're all going through this so that when they hit that ethical dilemma of, you know what, they cut 10% of my pay, I'm going to do this.
So the idea here is that you need to be aware of where pressure comes from on somebody's conduct. Don't assume somebody comes home and they say, oh, honey, I understand. We have to take the kids out of private school. It's okay. You know, a lot of people go home, they don't even have the conversation. They pretend that everything's just the way it was before. They're unprepared to even deal with it. Think about the financial pressure that they're under, and they're going to do a lot more than steal supplies right out of the supply cupboard. So you need to be honest with yourself. You need to be able to go stand in their shoes and to see what their world could look like, because it doesn't look like your world. Okay, they are going to make different choices because their sense of obligation is not to the client anymore, it's to their family. Can't really blame them, but go sell perfume at Macy's. Don't be a fiduciary, right? Those people can't belong with us.
And I think that's an interesting point that Ann's making there too, because if you go back to this whole fiduciary duty, you know, it's doing what's best for the client. This is where it gets really blurred. Yeah. And you have to help them understand what's best for the client. Because, I think it's the next one. Yeah, because, you know, I've worked in a lot of the different industries that support financial services, and I'm amazed when I talk to a banker or a broker or an advisor or a financial planner or a lender, and I ask them, do you do what's best for your client? They always say yes. They always say it. Well, of course I do. But they may not always see that there is an underlying dilemma that they're probably using to make that best decision.
That's right. That's exactly right.